And we welcome everyone here tonight. It's so lovely to have our little group, lovely to have our little choir. Thank you. Lovely to have our sisters and brothers join us through television, through Facebook. However you're looking at us, praise be to God. It's lovely to have you. And you have tuned in again because we are coming to you tonight with active nonviolence. Live in that. And guess what? It begins with me. Amen?
Amen.
And I wonder if people have got a message yet. You think people have got a message that nonviolence begins with me? So yes, sisters and brothers, it begins with all of us. And we've been having these wonderful talks, haven't we? And I mean, we've got a lot of feedback, and people are really very excited and interested in listening to our talks, and they find it very challenging. And I have a feeling that tonight it'll probably be just as challenging as we have Sandee and Hilary Bengochea. I will introduce them very well tonight by giving them their title. Praise be to God. So they're here tonight to share with us again something very, very interesting, because we're talking family, we're talking children. So we're going to be listening to something very special. Amen?
Amen.
Praise God. We want to thank our sisters and brothers coming up here, so let's give them a little clap. Thank you for coming. And it's so nice to be able to have this ready-made for us every week here on a Tuesday, that we can bring each and every one of them to our favorite audience, our nonviolence audience. Amen? Praise God.
Amen.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Rhonda, and thank you once again for the opportunity to be here and to speak with you. And tonight we want to talk about nonviolence, and we want to talk about nonviolence in schools. So we want our young ones to be, looking at us. I know that right now we're in end of term exams, so it might be a little bit difficult, but we especially want to ask our teachers to stay with us, and if you know other teachers who are around, and so because we want to share some techniques about active nonviolence and how we can really address it, because a lot of times we talk about violence in schools, and we exchange horror stories in and out, and we can go all night. If I start to exchange horror stories, I'm sure with our audience here this evening, we could stay until 11 o'clock sharing stories. But we're not here tonight to share horror stories. We're here to talk about what can we do about it, what can we do about this school violence. And when we talk about school violence, there are different types of violence we're talking about. We're talking about, first of all, the physical violence in school, which is what makes the papers all the time, the physical violence. And so we're also talking about corporal punishment in schools. Corporal punishment, of course, is, licks, we call it licks. And we're talking about bullying, bullying as well as school violence. When we talk about bullying, it's an intentional, it's aggressive behavior that occurs repeatedly against a victim, and it could be online, it could be after school, all kinds of stuff. So we're talking about that kind of violence. We're talking about psychological violence as well. And the psychological violence is the verbal abuse. And a lot of that is happening in our schools, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse to our children. So much of it, you see it happening. I mean, I saw it happen this evening in the car, picking up my grandchildren from school. With both of them, they jumped in the car, and they were sitting in the back seat, and they had a little tiff going on. And I realized, and then the second one, she used the soul force, the younger one, and we're going to talk about what is soul force, with the other one. And she challenged her to what she was doing to her emotionally. And then there was total silence in the car, and sometimes you have to pick your battles. But, there was total silence in the car. So we're talking about that kind of emotional violence, social violence in the school, eliminating people from your life. You can't hang out with us. This is a group of us, so we have our own cool thing happening. And so we're talking about that. And then also there's the other violence, the hushed violence that we don't hear very much about, the sexual violence that happens in school. The sexual violence against against, first of all, against females, against males, against people with gender bias. And so, there's a lot of violence, and then there's the absolute physical abuse, sexual abuse in school. And so we're talking about that, and how do we manage that kind of school violence, and how do we manage looking at that. Some of the drivers of school violence and bullying, some of the places where it occurs. And we have found, because we do some work, we go into the schools and do work, and you find that a lot of it happens, and you wouldn't believe it, with children with disabilities. Children, they are subjected to abuse. And a lot of times with young children, they are actually laughed at. They talked about children with disabilities who enter the school system, and they're just not coping well, and the other children say it blatantly, they just say it to them. And so there's also gender abuse as well. There's poverty and social status abuse happening in schools as well. A lot of times, the poverty, some children just cannot afford to look like other children, because they just can't. They can't afford to buy things for themselves. They can't afford to smell like the other students, A lot of them can't have a bath in the morning before they come to school. And because they're little people, they can't do anything about it, because the parents are there and they go to school, and there's a lot of abuse happening that way. There's ethnic abuse as well, and I don't have to talk about that one. We know there's a lot of ethnic abuse. There's linguistic abuse happening. The way the children speak, and people laugh at you because you've come from a certain district and you speak a certain way. Whether it's, whether you come from one side of the country or the other side, you're talked about the cultural differences that happen. There's abuse with people having different cultures. There is religious abuse as well, the different things. And I'm really sorry that it is happening in our schools. People who belong to certain religions, they also have challenges now in our society, and it's always something that we boasted about, that it never happened in our society. And it is happening in our society right now. There's a lot of religious abuse happening in our society. And of course, we spoke about sexual orientation, sexual identity, and so we call names. So there's a lot of abuse happening within our schools. And, as a society, there's so much we can do about it. As a society at large, when we think about abuse, and it's very easy for us as a society to point our fingers and say, the legal system would let us put things in place, let the Minister of Education do something. We can partner with different homes, different places, and do things. We can set policies in the schools, and there are lots of things that we can do about it. But, our theme is nonviolence begins with me. So it's easy for us as a society to say, well, the minister has to do something about that, or the society, or this school, or you find it's happening a lot in these kinds of schools and not those kinds of schools, and so, but it's happening, and it has to begin, first of all, with me. It has to begin with us as a society, and especially we want to appeal tonight to our teachers. It has to begin with us as teachers. How do we promote positivity among our teachers? And we know that teachers are stretched. I was a teacher myself, and those years having taught in secondary school, I have great respect for teachers. Great respect for teachers. Hats off to you. When you get your 8 weeks holidays, I don't envy you anymore. You deserve it. And so, because it is a lot of work to do. But the challenge is are you using it as a vocation, or are you using it as a career? That is the question.
That I just want to speak about begin with me. Just before we began this evening, Rhonda asked the question, are we getting through? Are we getting people to realize that nonviolence begins with me? And it immediately triggered a story, and Sandy wanted me not to go off on my stories. But it's a short story, and it is relevant because it is about beginning with me. One weekend we were giving a couple a little retreat on marriage. And from the beginning, from Friday evening, the wife was saying, well, you know, you do this, you don't do that, you do this. And whole Friday, whole of Saturday. And Saturday night, Sandy and myself sat down there together and said, well, you know, this couple hasn't made any progress at all. Because the whole weekend so far, all she's been doing is saying, it's you, it's your fault, you are to blame, you are to you. So I said, tomorrow morning at breakfast, I will try to trigger in her to remember that a lot of times things begin with me. So we seated ourselves strategically opposite them, and breakfast started, and she started. Oh, look at that. Look at this nice piece of bread that Hilary brought for Sandy. Look what you brought for me. You didn't bring juice. You should have put more butter. Look at the little bit of egg. Where's the sausage? So I thought this was my opportunity to get in and to try to change her. So I said, well, wait. You know, sometimes when we are always seeing faults in others, really and truly, we must look at ourselves, you know. Maybe the fault in us ourselves. She said, I'm so glad you said that. Boy, look at yourself. Look at yourself. So it's always very difficult. It's always very difficult that when we say we begin with me, we expect it begin with me to be that it is your me, not my me. But really it is my me. And one of the things that Sandy mentioned there is language. And there are three basic types of language: statements, questions, and predictions. And to begin with me, how do we use those three types of languages? We have to be very careful. We could either use it positively or could we use it negatively. So that, for example, statements, you could either say someone is, you're a good boy, you know, you're trying, you're making an effort, or you could say you're stupid. So therefore you can choose. When you speak, you have to say, how can I make my statements more positive instead of being negative statements? And it's questions. You know, you were supposed to wash the dishes. You can either ask, did you wash the dishes, which is a very neutral question, or you could add a loaded question. I'm sure you didn't wash the dishes. Or how much dishes you wash? Now that's Trinidadians. But the way we coin the question, we're already leading it up in a way that says that you didn't wash the dishes. And it's not a negative, it's not a positive. And then finally, probably the most hurtful and the most damaging one is predictions. Very often, and we have found it very often, that people tell children things very early in life. And those things stay with them. And you know, you're stupid, you will amount to nothing, you will be dunce, you wouldn't do well in school. All of those things remain. And I remember another short story, just bear with me. Once we had this couple and the wife was telling us, she said, you know something? My sister cursed me when I was very young. I said, cursed you? Well, how do you mean? She said, no, I'm telling you. You know, when we were growing up, it was just two sisters. And I did all the housework and she never did anything. And I was always cleaning up. And one day we are driving in the car, mommy and daddy's driving, mommy in the front, and we both sisters in the back. And we passed a big house. And my sister said to me, you see that big house? I will marry a rich man, and I will get a house like that. And whole day long, I will just be going through the house, just cleaning this big house and making it look pretty. And the sister said, you cleaning the house? You don't even clean the bedroom. You never wash the dishes. You don't do anything. And you know something? You don't do anything, so how are you going to clean that big house? And the sister felt it, and she said, you see, you will never have anything. And you will never amount to anything. And she said, you know something? That remained with me all my life. Anytime I try something, it didn't come out. And it's my sister. I said, no, it's not that. But it showed me how damaging predictions can be. And first of all, we must avoid predictions. We're not prophets. But we should be careful when we especially putting things on people. So I just want to remind people, language can either lift you up or language can push you down. Choose positive statements. Choose neutral or positive questions. I'm sure you washed all the dishes. Instead of negative ones, and then choose positive predictions. You will become a bright boy, you will get a good job, you will have a good life. those things remain instead of using it as a negative prediction.
So what we are saying is a relationship is nourished or destroyed one conversation at a time. One conversation at a time. We can, and that's how relationships are built or destroyed. And we could just progressively be destroyed and just really eroding a conversation, a relationship, one conversation at a time. So, teachers, I know, and, Thomas Burton says, and I have it here, to allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit to too many projects, to want to help everybody in everything is itself to succumb to violence, to the violence of our times. And that is violence to self, And we commit a violence against ourselves simply by the way we arrange our lives, and we go on and we say yes and we get involved. And as teachers, we have the class and we're there and we all over. And sometimes, without realizing what we're doing, we are having conversations with our young people and we're destroying them. And I just went online and I picked up this little bit of research. So forgive me for referring to this research because we're trying to stay positive, but I think we need to, a little bit, as Hilary said, examine ourselves and examine our conversations while we are talking to our young people and trying to correct them. What are some of these slips that we make, And this was taken from a paper, Post-Colonial Structural Violence, a study of school violence in Trinidad and Tobago by Hakim Williams. And these are some of the comments that he was interviewing, doing research and interviewing the children. And these are some of the things they said. Sir, if you make a mistake, some teachers yell at you and behave stupid. She screams at us. Teachers are out of timing. They treat us like dogs. Teachers use obscene language. Yes, sir, they call you jackass, sir, and they punch you in the back, sir. They take advantage of you and want to rank up. So if you tell them you don't understand, they buff you and say what you don't understand. So I think teachers and deans shouldn't call children stupid and things like that. These are reports on things that actually happened, okay? Because, well, some children really bad, but some teachers like to curse you. If you react and say something bad to them, they say you disrespectful. Some teachers bring their home troubles to school. If their husband get them vexed, they come into the school with a rage. Now, what we're talking about there, does that really happen? I know I'm seeing teachers in our midst, Does that really happen, Yeah, it happens in some schools, And, we're not saying the teachers, but sometimes I think when nonviolence begins with you, and sometimes, I've had over the last couple of weeks, because to be talking to young people about nonviolence and to have two young children in the house, like my two granddaughters, they are the greatest teachers because they have listened to my talks and they challenge me on every leg, everything. And they remind me, you've been violent, and stop. And then when they are being violent, and they tell me, you just stop that non-violence thing now, because they realize that they have done something now, But it really challenges you. And sometimes, we need to find peace with ourselves. We need to find that inner peace in ourselves as teachers, and as parents as well, and as teachers. We need, because if non-violence begins with you, you have to treat yourself non-violently. You have to be non-violent with yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself. And to do that, I know many of us do meditation. It's one of the ways that you can just be still and know that I am God. Just spend time being still with yourself and spend time just being there. Listen to your body. Listen to your body. Are you feeling, you enter the classroom, you listen to your body and you know it. And you enter a place and you're all worked up and you're stressed and your life is like, tense. And so, and you know you had issues that you're dealing with and you come in and some child says something and you're ready to pelt something at them, or there's an incident happening there. And how are you going to teach them nonviolence if you're being nonviolent to yourself? And if you are not experiencing, if when you walk into that classroom and you face out your children, they don't see a picture of peace and a picture of nonviolence and someone who they can really trust and who they can see the peace within that person, then it happens. I was doing some work with some little ones last week. And they're talking, and they were all over the class, and and of course I had limited time with them. So I had an hour and a half with them, and they were chatting and chatting, and I got very quiet, and then I walked up to them, and I just stayed quiet, and then they said, what, so I said, I am feeling so hurt, because I have so many things that I came here to tell you and to share with you, and I'm not getting a chance to talk at all, because you're talking so much, and nobody's listening to me. And they were like, oh, okay, miss, we'll be quiet, and we listen. And, what I did was, I used soul force with them. What I did was, I used soul force with them. I spoke my truth. I spoke my truth. Because I could have done it like that, or I could have said, shut up, everybody be quiet, stand up, hands up, down, hop down, all teacher stylings, and get them to be quiet. Next person, you will come and stand up here, and you will come and stand up here, and you will go in the front. You could have done it that way, but you could, and being like that, the children, they stayed quiet, and they were actually listening. And teaching a method to them. Teaching a method. If I get angry, how do I deal with my anger? If something is happening that I don't like, and we're talking about our young people, because I was when I taught, I realized that a lot of students don't have the tools of language to deal with their situation. They don't have the tools of language. They don't know how to express themselves. So they're angry, and they know they're angry, but they don't know what's happening inside of them. They don't know how to say it. They don't know how to express it. They don't have the words. They don't have the skills to express it. And so in Trinidad, we do one or two things. We either say the F word, we strips loud, or the body language, and you see it in the schools all the time, and they get up and they storm out of the classroom, and they do all kinds of things, and you see them acting up, and so, because they don't know, now that I am angry, how do I now deal with it? How do I now deal with my anger? Yes, and we'd like to invite people at this time. We'd like to open up our lines, and please call us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you share your thoughts with us. And we're talking about nonviolence, and we're looking at the school environment this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Sandy said there, because as I said before, it is teaching people to speak nonviolently. Teaching them to be able to have non-violent adjectives. Very often people are violent because they lack vocabulary. And very often their structure, as I said, their statements are violent because they do not know how to communicate it non-violently. And I have found that Trinidadians, our culture per se, we're a people that don't like to have difficult conversations. In dealing with a lot of parents, what I have found now is that a lot of parents avoid having difficult conversations because they don't know how to handle it, and they avoid it. And they believe by avoiding it, it will get better, but avoidance does not improve things. It just gets it worse. So one of the things is the ability to have difficult conversations. Very often you see the child is doing something wrong, and you want to correct him, but you also want to be nice. You also want to be a cool parent, so therefore you avoid it. You see that they're doing something wrong, you say, but I just quarreled with them, let me leave it alone. And I would like to challenge us. We're a people.
Also, if I could add, the teachers, and we've been to many schools where the teachers, at lunchtime, they lock up themselves in the staff room. Not what it is, I saw it on Rhonda's Facebook. Not my monkeys, not my circus, not my monkeys. But, it is so true. You see that? I come here to teach, and you see lunchtime, and so leave me, I need my hour piece.
Yes. So the ability to have difficult conversations. We are a people very often that when we are face to face with someone, we say nice things. But then when they go, then we say what we want to say about them. We speak badly behind their backs. And the ability, I always look at television and I see how these children on television and the parents are able to speak openly. But as a people, in a sort of misguided thing that we are doing good thing by avoiding a conversation, we end up speaking about it behind. So you see people will say very bad things, and when the person reaches in the conversation, say, hi, how you going? Yes, yes, yes. So we have to learn to have difficult conversations. You know, you have to go through, not at the moment necessarily, but if you notice that the child is doing something wrong or bad, you know, you make a mental note of it. And then you choose a time, and then you practice, as I said in a previous talk, Kara. You know, you sit down, you center yourself, you are calm, and when you are in that mood, you call the child, and then you would like to say, I would like to have a conversation with you about so-and-so, what happened earlier today. And then you articulate your truth. And the ability to speak and to speak about an issue, even if it is a difficult issue. You see the child going out, you told them to come in at 10 o'clock, but they came in at 11:30. And you let it slide. But letting it slide is not a good thing. The ability to say, well, look, last night you had a curfew, you had a time limit, you were supposed to come home at 10 o'clock, but you came home at 11:30, and it caused me a lot of anguish. I was up, I couldn't sleep. I rolled over. I was thinking about calling your friend. I did not know what to do. My mind is muddled with all of these stories that are going on. Please, do you know the pain and the suffering that you caused me? And what do you have to say for yourself? So instead of avoiding difficult conversation, as parents, as teachers, we must be willing and show by example, choose times, but have the difficult conversations. As a parent, as a teacher, you're not meant to be popular. You know, I had a lesson early on in life as a teacher. I was teaching at Fatima College. Just came out of A-level, and I was, well, you're not really trained as a teacher, but you think you're cool as a teacher. And I was teaching Form 3. And I was a cool teacher. I was a really nice teacher. And then somewhere towards the end of the term, the school decided that they would have a vote about who was the best teacher. Now, I thought immediately, because I was such a cool, nice teacher, I would win hands down. I was surprised that a very stern, harsh French teacher got voted. And he won by far, by a big margin. So afterwards, I met some of the younger boys and I said, well, how did you all vote for so-and-so? He says, sir, he cares about us. He is very concerned about us studying. And very often when you hear him berating us, it is because he cares. He wants us to learn the French. He wants us to pass. So I would like to say to parents, trying to be popular, and teachers, trying to be popular does not make you popular. By being proper, by articulating the truth. Sandy spoke about soul force. By articulating this truth, by bearing witness to the truth, by having the strength of character to choose to have a difficult conversation and not let it slide, by not necessarily being popular, but by being correct and a proper teacher and a proper parent, you are doing more good than trying to be popular.
I'm sure our audience has some comments or questions to make at this time. And remember, we're waiting on your calls. We'd love to hear from you. We are talking about nonviolence and active nonviolence. How do we look in the face of violence and say, no, this is not the way we need to be? And active nonviolence, of course, is something that requires a lot of soul force, a lot of strength.
I think something very beautiful that you said is when you come into the class and you have kids in front of you, and whatever the situation there is, how you handle that situation is what is most important.
Yes.
And if you come in a non-violent way, then that's the biggest testimony of how to live non-violence. But for us now to learn that and to learn how to respond at that time, give us some help. How do we do this?
You know, and a lot of times when we think of people who are non-violent, and we love this image of, is it the Janes, or just kind of walking around and, just totally this calm person taking abuse and live and you do nothing about it. Well, it's actually quite the opposite. Active nonviolence and when I keep using the word soul force, it requires a lot of strength. It requires a lot of inner strength, and you have to be strong. And I saw it acted out last week with two little people like this. They were both 10 years old, Prep 4 people. And I told them, I said, I want an incident that is really taking place in this class. Let's just use this active nonviolence. Let's use this soul force and come up here and let's talk about it. So this little girl puts up her hand and she says, Miss, I want to talk about it because he teases me about, well, I won't use the incident. He teases me a lot about Sue. And she pointed to the little boy. And the little boy he's obviously the little class leader, you know, so he gets up and he comes across and he stands up and he watches her, you know, and his little thing and he watches her. And she stood up and she said, I am very hurt. When you tell me this about myself, I become very hurt and I feel very hurt and it makes me very sad. And I go home and I cry and I wish you would stop. Why do you do it? And immediately his face went, and he watched me, you know. And I said, well, you know, she's asked you a question, answer. He says, well, I don't know. It's just, well, it makes me, the rest of the boys think it's cool, and we just think it's cool. She says, but it hurts me a lot when you do it. I says, sorry. And he went back and he sat down. And the class was hushed because they experienced truth. They experienced the effects of truth. Now, if she had gone in another way, but she challenged him and he met her as to where she was, and she dared to do it. And soul force, when we talk about that kind of strength, and I told her afterwards that, you know something, your strength in doing what you did was a lot more than his strength than what he did. Because it's easy for him with the whole group. I said, but you're the strong one. And when we talk about active nonviolence, we're talking about that kind of strength that comes from here. Welcome, caller. Thank you for holding.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, good night. Oh, I'm just calling in to tell you all that I'm enjoying the show. I listened to you all the last time, and I'm listening to you all today again as a teacher. I taught for many years too. And to me, all this is new to me now, this new thing of violence in the schools and bullying, because long ago in teaching, we used to supervise the classes, supervise when they had their recreation and so on. Teachers no longer do that. So maybe that is why all these things happening. As you just said, they go into the staff room for lunch, and so long ago you had your lunch right in front of the children.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, well, I guess, yeah, those are some of the modern day challenges that we face with our school system right now. You know, the more we develop, the more challenges we have. But, you know...
I just wanted to add on to, I think the caller is still on now, or the caller has left. She's left. Okay, just wanted to add something onto Sandee's example, is that the ability to express feelings is very powerful. The girl expressed her hurt. And probably one of the things that we have to do as parents and teachers is teach our children how to express feelings. Very often, they're experiencing feelings, and they may be feeling negative feelings, but they lack the ability to express it. They lack, first of all, the strength, they lack the confidence, and then they lack the words, they lack the language. So that a big part of understanding that nonviolence begins with me is how can I use language, and how can I teach language that is, first of all, emotionally expressive and is also uplifting, that it requires a lot. And I would dare say, listening for Sandee's example, it's almost that we have to start, this nonviolence can't stop now, you know. This thing has to go on like for a couple of years, because we have to reprogram all our language, how we greet each other, how we speak to each other. We have to be able to express ourselves in feelings of hurt. I am hurt. When you say this to me, I feel bad. You know, recently we heard two young children, and one of them said, you know, whenever I come in the room, you get vexed. So it hurts me. And the ability to say that is a very powerful thing. How can we express our feelings, articulate our feelings, and have the words to describe how we feel? A big part of them is that.
Yes, yeah. We have a question.
Just wanted to ask, though, it's good to express, but then the response sometimes is, but you're real soft, boy.
Yes.
You know, so it's also giving us the strength to deal with rejection.
Yes.
When we are expressing ourselves.
Our
and-
vulnerability.
Exactly, and then moving forward.
Yes.
And that's why we say that, to active nonviolence requires a lot of strength. I mean, Jesus was actively nonviolent. He was certainly not a pushover. I mean, you listen to the Gospels these last couple of weeks, and so he certainly was not a pushover. He's walking through this week in the porticos and so, and he just says, fix your eyes and so, and he stood up against people and so.
Social
and,
injustice.
Yes, when he was slapped, he said, "Why did you slap me? I did not do you anything. I did you nothing. Why did you slap me?" And so nonviolence doesn't seek to defeat or to humiliate the opponents, but to win friendship and understanding. And that's the kind of strength that we need to start developing in our young people. And so it's not to humiliate. You hear young people talking now, and it's put down after put down, the names we're calling each other. And so, and what we have to do is we have to resist the evil, the oppression, and say, no, I am. And it's what Hilary says, is what we've been trying to do. We have to change the language, and we have to change, and what we say here, it has to impact here. We have to change the language, it's really an attack on the forces of evil rather than against the persons that's doing the evil. And so, we have to say, I don't love what you're doing, but I love you. I don't love what you're doing, but I do love you, and I really want the best for you. And and it's something that that we have to, in the schools, we have to tell our young people that. We have to tell our young people, I love you. You are beautiful. What you are doing is not. And I have had experiences as a teacher. I have experienced extreme failure, and I don't want to even talk about it because it's very painful for me to talk about, but I've experienced extreme failure in watching one of my students totally deteriorate to the point where he's now on death row. Yeah, and I looked at this boy and I knew in my heart that he was going that way. And I watched him and I tried, I would do, well, I could help him here, but within the environment of the school and whatever and so on. And I negotiated with myself to stay away from it. And I saw it to the end. And which is why you have, right now, I know I have to do it. I have to do it. Thank you, caller. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Thank you for waiting. Hello, please.
Hello, good night.
Good night.
As a retired teacher, I appreciate this program tonight so much. Thank you. But I would like to switch up a bit and talk about a different type of institutional violence. I have a son who has MS, and I tried to get an appointment for him to join clinic, and I tried to get the appointment in 2015, and the appointment was for 2017. So yesterday, I went for the first time to clinic with my son. First of all, they told me to arrive at 8. I got there at 8, and it was traumatic. I'm still traumatized. I'm still trembling. Violence, the way they treat people of those institutions. We are all taxpayers. Finally, the doctor came in at 1. I saw the doctor at 2. The doctor was explaining about MS, and he was telling my son that he should do physiotherapy. So my son was explaining to him that he did acupuncture in the past, and he found that it helped. The doctor got very angry, and he told him, you want to get better or not? You want to walk again or not? I am telling you physiotherapy. So my son was saying, well, I tried acupuncture in the past, and it helped. The doctor got up and walked out of the room, left us sitting there. Eventually, a junior doctor came in, and he wrote a note for us to see another doctor next month. He does not want to deal with anybody who has anything to say. Isn't that a form of violence? Thank you. I'll be listening on the television.
Thank you. Thank you very much for, and you hear the pain in the caller's voice, and yes, and when we talk about violence, it's those very things. If we can, as a society, starting with our schools, if we can learn to empathize, to understand that we're all just human beings on this journey, it is so important that we empathize, and I really apologize on behalf of our country to you, because where did we go wrong? Where did we lose it as a country?
Yes. I had the privilege recently of doing retreat sessions with young people aged about 14, and a lot of what we were doing with them had to do with nonviolence. And what I found is that they were very eager to understand the concept and to get the tools that were associated with the concept to be able to use them. I was really surprised that they uncovered violence perhaps in their own classrooms and were willing to apply the concepts that they had learned that day to those situations. So in some of the instances, I would say, just based on my limited experience, that getting the tools associated with the concept of nonviolence into the hands of the students in the school is also important, because you were talking about the anger and not being able to express it. But the tools of the nonviolence concept helps in helping them to shape the thought and the response in a particular way. And therefore, I see it urgent and really important to continue to get.
Probably become a subject in school.
And when you talk about the tools, nonviolence begins with me. The tools, they exist here, and they exist here. And I know you do a lot of meditation with young people as well, so I'm sure you could say something about that. But the ability to recognize that I am, my body is starting to react. I need to either walk away from this situation, or I need to calm myself. Now, that is what we're talking about. I know recognizing, the secular world might call it mindfulness, we call it all kinds of things, but being able to recognize that this is happening to my body now. I'm getting agitated, I'm getting upset, I want to do it, and recognizing that. Those are some of the tools we're talking about, active nonviolence, and to be able to stand up for what you believe, as Mahatma Gandhi said. For this cause, I am willing to die, but for no cause am I willing to kill. For no cause am I willing to kill. So this is what I stand for. And I think very often, as you were saying, how does a young child do that in the face of the schools? If we can teach the schools that child is the strong one, that child has the inner strength, and start teaching our young people that is where the strength is. It's easy to slap and to bully. And that's easy, and you walk with a crowd and so, but that's because a lot of times it's because you lack the tools, the social tools to really, connect with other people at that level, at that human level, and active nonviolence is a human way to fight, and it's a human way to really stand up and be in the school. So when we talk about the tools, those are the tools we're talking about. I don't know if you'd like to add something.
Sandee,
Yes.
I have a question, really. We hear about the violence that's going on in schools, and I'm hearing what you're saying tonight. Is there a focused effort, a program within schools to help teachers cope with the violence that they encounter? And is it being done at all levels? I get this sense that this violence that's unraveling has just become too much of a problem for people to react to. And instead of reacting, is there a positive way that they can bring that message into. I'm thinking of Montessori program. If you go to a Montessori school with small children, you never hear noise. They are trained from the time they start that school that you speak in a lower conversational tone. You come up to the teacher and you discuss a problem if you have one. The teacher speaks to you in a highly respectful way and in a modulated voice. And you can go into a Montessori school at recess time and you'll never hear the screaming and the madness that goes on at grade school levels. And, you know, is there something where the teachers can access the knowledge of how to cope? Because you put a young teacher into a classroom with a lot of very angry, violent young people, and he or she just has to learn by the bobbing and weaving with them, rather than come in there with tools to handle a situation like that.
Well, first thing, Lilias, I'm glad you added angry, violent in your second part of your statement, because sometimes noisy classrooms does not necessarily mean, violent classrooms, and sometimes it's good because too often the very thing we're saying is that sometimes we suppress our children speaking so much that they don't get an opportunity to learn to express themselves. And it's one of the things that I have found in teaching, even now teaching at university level. A lot of times the students don't know how to express themselves because they can write, but they certainly can't express themselves.
Okay, I teach meditation in schools, and I have found that children who learn how to meditate learn how to self-regulate. Yes. So they know when they're getting angry, I need to stop and take a breath and say my prayer word and get to calm. And it has been effective in schools in Jamaica. The worst school ever in Jamaica, they wanted to close it down. And instead, they started meditation only because the principal didn't know what else to do. They had tried everything else. And in a year's time, the school turned around. You know, children who they thought would drop out didn't drop out. Children who were fights went down in the school. Suspensions went down. Their academic achievement went up. So, you know, we need to start teaching people
and
how
if
to
I could
become.
just thank you very much. And just to answer Lilias as well, you know, when you're very right that they need a program for the teachers, because very often we go in and we're talking to the young people and the teachers is like, I'm taking copious notes, you know, and afterwards she says, I didn't know all of this. First of all, they didn't know it was going on in their classroom, and secondly, you know, the methods that we're teaching them, they found they were so useful.
I just wanted to stress that in the civil statement, it says that violence is a learned behavior. It is not a natural behavior. We learn violence through our upbringing. And recently on Facebook, there was a young lady who put a post, and I should have brought it here, and she asked a statement, and she says, what is the worst thing or that someone has said to you, that a male has said to you? And the comments, when I read through the comments, it was very, very, very abusive. And I therefore would like to make a statement towards my men folk, as I'm being a man, to really that sometimes you think you're doing things for fun, you know, the way you comment on girls passing, but you're leaving painful experiences that remain for a lifetime. Some of these young ladies expressed that somebody made such and such a statement when they were 12 and they were 13, and they still remember it up to today.
Yeah. So we'd just like to thank all our callers. Thank you very much for taking the time to call, and to our audience, thank you. And thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to talk to you this evening. And we're going to hand back over to Rhonda.
Praise God. Very good. Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed. That was a wonderful, wonderful sharing. I'm sure all of you at home, or wherever you're joining us from, have really got a lot of meat today. I was just thinking as you went on that the tagline, nonviolence begins with me, one person at a time, one family at a time, one school at a time, one student at a time, one community at a time. There's no other way. There's no other way. And I think a lot of what you shared here tonight really spoke that to me. There's no other way. There's no other way. How can we teach it? It has to begin with me, as if one person. After me, then I can help someone. Then that person can help, and then you will have 3 people being helped. And that's how it has to go. That's how it's going to be a long journey, sisters and brothers. It's going to be a long journey. We are not on a 100-yard dash at all. This is a marathon that we're on. And I really want to thank you very much for sharing, because I know you all have had so much experience in teaching, especially with kids and families and couples and everything. And this is where it's at. This is where it's at. You know, this is where we have to begin. And you have given us invaluable amount of stuff here tonight so that we can really chew on that and really see, you know, how am I in the face of that? Whether I'm a parent, whether I'm a single parent, whether I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a teacher, I'm a child. It doesn't matter. All of us need to learn this. We need to learn this. We need to learn how to be nonviolent. And that isn't to be a pushover, but to be a strong woman or a strong man in the world today. And what we are giving to the world is giving it life. And what we say and how we act is only going to give life and not death. So we thank God for that, sisters and brothers. And thank you all for joining us. We'll be back again next week. The whole of next week, actually, Monday to Friday, we have Sister Julie Peters. So please tune in at 8 o'clock. We have a whole week's retreat on this active nonviolence, so we can be sure it's going to be exciting stuff. So God bless you all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Enjoy your night. Cuddle up there with your blanket and your pillow, and enjoy the rest of the night. God bless you all. Thank you.